It's time to return to Arrakis. This is why we go to the movies. Let's talk Dune Part 2. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my spoiler-free review for Dune Part 2. This is exclusively in movie theaters right now, and that's, of course, in contrast to Dune Part 1, which came out in 2021 amongst, the COVID stuff. It was about a year and a half after, COVID had hit. So theaters were back open, but a lot of people a bit hesitant still to go. So Warner Brothers released it simultaneously on what was then HBO Max. And so a lot of people unfortunately did not go to the theater to see it, but Warner Brothers did the right thing, and just a few weeks ago they re-released the original Dune from 2021 in theaters, so everybody could experience it if they wanted to in that way. And these movies, look, these are the types of movies that you want to go to the theater to see. These stunning visuals, look, we'll get into it, but all of that. And so if you did not catch Dune Part 1 in theaters, do yourself a favor and see this one on a big screen. All right, so before we launch into any of this, though, let me welcome you into Dan Reviews It. Thank you for finding this video. Movie and TV reviews are the name of the game here, and just about every day I try to post something new. So there's always a lot to check out on the channel here. So please subscribe, hit that like button, comment below. All that stuff, of course, helps the channel out. And check out my Letterboxd as well. That's in the description below, along with my Facebook and my X feed. And Letterboxd is really cool. You can kind of rate your movies there and keep a diary of what you've seen and on what day, whatever. So you can check out mine there. All right, so Dune Part 2. I will remind you of my Dune Part 1 grade. It wasn't really called Dune Part 1, but as opposed to the David Lynch version of the 80s, I'm going to continue to call it Dune Part 1. But if you did not see my video for that, I ended up giving that movie an A. It was in my top 10 of the year. However, on a personal level, and I said this in the video, it was more of a, B plus, maybe even a B. It was a bit boring at times, Dune Part 1. But, visually it was stunning. It was unlike anything I had really ever seen on the big screen, and it was just technologically a marvel. And all of those aspects were great, the acting and all of that stuff. So I ended up giving it an A just for the sheer magnitude of the picture, but on a personal level it was more of a B plus or a B. This one, no, this is an little spoiler for my grade here, this is an A through and through. I mean, this corrects a lot of the problems from Dune 1 that I had. And look, it makes sense because there was a lot of build-up there. We had to introduce a bunch of characters. We had to introduce this world. And I had seen the David Lynch version of the film twice, actually. And so, I'm familiar with it. And, of course, if you read the book, from the 60s, then, some of the things that happen will be of no surprise. But look, a lot of moviegoers don't read the book beforehand, even a classic like this. I mean, this is a dense sci-fi book, right? So a lot of your casual readers are not going to read it. I certainly have never read the book. So they have to, build the world and introduce everybody and introduce, what's going on and who's this. And so I thought there was a bit of a slower build-up in that first part. There were some parts that dragged. Part 2, none of that. So essentially this takes, I guess, the last half of the book. And so as a real, quick, spoiler-free kind of thing. So Paul Atreides, of course, returns. That is Timothée Chalamet's character. And he's uniting with the Fremen people of Arrakis, the desert planet, to wage war against House Harkonnen. That's all we'll really say in terms of the plot. But we have a lot of the people returning from that first movie. Everybody really that I guess is of note. I can't remember if certain people died or not, but I only saw the first part once. But Timothée Chalamet, like I said, of course, he's returning. Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Charlotte Rampling, David Bautista, Javier Bardem, and, of course, Zendaya, who has, I would say, a much bigger role in Part 2. So they all return, but we also have a bunch of newcomers as well, including Florence Pugh, Christopher Walken, Léa Seydoux, and Austin Butler as the big bad in this one. Maybe you've seen some stills of him, or if you saw the preview, I'm sure he was featured in that. Um, Whew, he looks menacing in this, Austin Butler. We've seen him play Elvis. We've seen him, do a few things along the way. Currently, he's in the Apple Plus TV show Masters of War. Um, but this is an intense role for him. So look, everything that worked about that first movie is still firing on all cylinders here. You've got the amazing score by Hans Zimmer, always, of course, a classic. Um, and in this one, they actually, I think, rely on it a little bit less to kind of inform the scenes with dialogue a little bit more. In the first one, I did feel like perhaps the Zimmer score was a little overpowering. It was great, of course, but here I think they've really found a good balance. And this was directed, as was part one, by Denis Villeneuve, who has done Sicario and Arrival and Prisoners. All of his movies are just like next level stuff. And this one is no exception. The effects here are great. A lot of them practical. There's certainly some CGI, but I like to call it CGI sweetening, because, and I'm sure I didn't make that up. I'm sure people have said that, but like, it's not a full blown CGI, but they're dripping it in a little bit here and there as needed. But for the most part, a lot of these effects are practical. In fact, one of the articles I read about this movie is that it took 3 months to do one scene, which ended up being 3 minutes on the screen. And it involves a huge creature, and that was almost entirely practical. I personally think practical effects are the way to go if you're able to do it. Obviously, some of the Marvel stuff where it's like, okay, you're on a different planet or what, but look, Arrakis is a different planet, right? But in things like that where everyone's flying all the time, like Iron Man or whatever, it's a little harder to do practical effects. But something like Mad Max Fury Road, that was all practical effects. George Miller, another proponent of that style of effects, was great in that way. And it doesn't date the movie either. A lot of the effects heavy movies of, say, the early 2000s look real bad now, because we've come so far with that technology. But with practical, look, it's always going to be the same. It's always going to look the same. And the effects here are fantastic. And the biggest, I think, issue with part one is that, yes, it is slow at parts. It's a little bit boring at parts. I didn't feel that at all. This is about the same length. I forget how long part one was, but this is 2 hours and 40 minutes, or maybe even 45 minutes. But it doesn't feel it. There's so much going on. These characters are now so well developed. I thought this just went right by. It did not feel the length at all. If I had to guess, I would have said maybe 2 hours. And boy, is that a sign of a good movie. So everything about this works. And the cast, oh my God, the cast. We've got, look, this is maybe one of the best casts that's been assembled in a long time. Oppenheimer, of course, had a great cast as well. Florence Pugh involved in both. But when we think about, all of these up-and-comers, already we've seen Timothée Chalamet and Austin Butler play these super diverse characters. Timothée Chalamet was just Wonka, for Christ's sake. Very, very different. And then Austin Butler, like I mentioned, some of his roles. And they are clearly proving themselves to be, really Renaissance men of all trades. They can, do comedy. They've both hosted SNL in the last year and a half, and did great jobs on that. So they can do comedy very well. They can do musical, obviously, with Wonka and Elvis, and they can do drama. They can do sci-fi. So, two up-and-comers. I don't know better ones than Timothée Chalamet and Austin Butler. And then you've got, of course, Zendaya, who is on fire, and she can do everything as well, of course. And then you have people like Florence Pugh, who've been around maybe a little longer, but we've also seen her being very, very diverse, mixed in with this cast of people who have been doing it for decades and have proven time and again that they can do just about every genre. You know, Javier Bardem, Josh Brolin, Christopher Walken. This cast is just superb. So the only complaint really that I have about this movie is, believe it or not, with the length, and not that it's too long. I actually think, I know the book is so long and it's so dense and everything. I've never read it, like I said, but I think there's a few sequences that go actually too quickly, because I'm sure Villeneuve did not want to make this a 3.5 hour movie. But there's, towards the end, it feels a little rushed. I think there's maybe a couple of standoffs that end rather quickly, and I was surprised. That would be really my only complaint. So unlike the first Dune in 2021, where I gave it an A, because of how it came off on the screen, the technological marvel of it, whereas I was more, like I said, in the B plus or B range personally for the movie. This one, I'm an A, it's an A. The whole thing is really, really firing on all cylinders. And people have said that it was good for Christopher Nolan that this did not get released in 2023 as it was supposed to, because I guess of the strike or something. But because I think this is going to be a real contender for the Oscars this year. And there is a possible third movie coming. It all depends on how the second one performs at the box office. And the first one, or the second one's existence depended on how the first one did, both on HBO and at the box office. So this movie actually might never have been made, but it did. I think it's already doing amazing. I know Thursday Night Previews had it at $12 million, which is huge for a Thursday night preview. So I'm sure we'll be getting the third part of this. Villeneuve said he envisioned this as a trilogy, and if that's the case, I think this will go down as one of the great sci-fi trilogies of all time. I really, really believe that, if the third one's as good as this. Far and away the best movie of 2024 for me. I leave Dune Part 2, as I've mentioned, with an A. So thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It. Go see this if you're able to in IMAX. I don't have an IMAX near me, so I did not, but I imagine it would look even better there. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on Dan Reviews It. Bye.